Senator Roraback.
Thank you, Madam President. Wow, we just spent better than an hour learning all about the spending side of the budget. And, Madam President, I wouldn't want the citizens of Connecticut to be deprived of the opportunity to spend at least an equal amount of time better understanding the $3.7 billion in new taxes which this budget imposes over the next 2 years. Madam President, I've been looking at the bill and wondering, where do I start? There are 81 new sections increasing taxes on a beleaguered Connecticut public. For the middle class, I guess the message would be, hold on to your hat, we're going to tax you from head to toe and everything in between. Madam President, your pedicure is going to be taxable, and if you wear a baseball cap on your way to the pedicure, that too will be taxable. And when you get that spa, the whole body spa treatment that is so enjoyed, that too will be taxed. Nothing is sacred. Madam President, it's the middle class that is taking it the hardest with this budget. A middle class which for the past 2 or 3 years has found it increasingly difficult to sustain themselves in the state of Connecticut. And I do think that we as a legislature have turned a deaf ear to the reality on the streets in Connecticut in believing that the middle class can absorb $1.7 billion in new income taxes over the next 2 years, $283 million in new sales taxes, and kind of the ultimate insult, it's always been the case in this state that clothing and footwear under $50, not fancy stuff, the stuff that is clothing kids and adults who are not living extravagantly, is now going to be subjected to sales tax, and that will bring in another $260 million into our coffers. Madam President, for those that might enjoy a beer at the end of the day, that too will be taxed an additional $20 million over the next 2 years. And for people who rely on electricity, and I don't think there's many people in Connecticut who don't rely on electricity, we're seeing fit to raise electric rates by $144 million over the next 2 years. Madam President, all of this at a time when virtually every other state around the nation is recognizing the necessity to do the very difficult work required to rein in the size, scope, and cost of government, because many states recognize that we are on a glide path to bankruptcy. And absent the imposition of discipline on ourselves, which will come with pain, I would never hold out to you that we can discipline ourselves without enduring pain, but the pain of not disciplining ourselves is likely to be even greater. Madam President, Connecticut is supposed to be open for business, but it's hard for me to go back to my district and say we're open for business when this budget is going to be imposing a 20% surcharge on the corporate income tax for each of the next 2 years. It's hard for me to go back to my district and say we're open for business when my corner jeweler is going to see an impact on its business because of the imposition of a so-called luxury tax, as is my local car dealer. Madam President, our local businesses are also going to have to pay the increased sales tax. They're going to have to pay the increased electric charges. All of that at a time when Connecticut is struggling to keep its nostrils above the waterline. Madam President, I have a couple of questions through you, if I may, to the distinguished chair of the Finance Committee.
Prepare yourself, Senator Daley.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you to Senator Daley, is it is it the case that the budget before us will result, or is projected to result, in general fund surpluses in each of the next 2 years? Through you, Madam President, to Senator Daley.
Senator Daley.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Yes, sir, you're correct. And that surplus is already designated to go to pay down debt.
Thank you, Madam President. So through you to Senator Daley, does she know how much of a surplus is expected to be realized in the fiscal year 12 budget?
Senator Daley.
I think that was in the neighborhood of $300 million, and then in the neighborhood of 600, bringing us close to $1 billion in total.
Senator Roraback.
Thank you, Madam President. And I'm not trying to put Senator Daley on the spot. I guess a fairer way to do this would be to ask Senator Daley if she would disagree with me if I told her that I understand the surplus will be $369 million in fiscal year 12 and $635 million in fiscal year 13.
Senator Daley.
Through you, Madam President.
Thank you, Madam President. And through you, no, I wouldn't disagree, and that brings us to the $1 billion neighborhood referred to.
Senator Roraback.
Thank you, Mr. President. And through you to Senator Daley, can Senator Daley understand why it is that the taxpayers of Connecticut might call into question our raising taxes on them to the tune of $3.7 billion over the next 2 years, and $1 billion of that representing a surplus that we're going to feed back to the state of Connecticut? Through you, Madam President, to Senator Daley.
Senator Daley.
Thank you, Madam President, and through you, I can well understand how anybody would ask that question, and I think we should be prepared to answer it. And we have borrowed more than we should in years past, and that surplus will be used to pay down debt.
Senator Roraback.
Thank you, Madam President. And Senator Daley will get no quarrel from me that we have borrowed excessively over the past several years, and I would suggest that the better way to deal with that phenomenon would be to reduce our borrowing going forward rather than to pile on a public which is struggling to make ends meet and taxing them to a degree that they are ill positioned to absorb at this moment in time. But I can appreciate Senator Daley's answer, but I think we've fallen far short of the mark in terms of looking for ways to offer relief to the taxpayers of the state of Connecticut. A couple other questions through you, Madam President, to Senator Daley. On the hospital tax, through you, Madam President, to Senator Daley, does she have an understanding of the consequences of that tax today? Through you, Madam President.
Senator Daley.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and through you to Senator Roraback. I don't yet have a copy of runs that were being done today. None has been delivered to me. But the consequence overall is that it raises taxes on some hospitals and returns money to hospitals. And my understanding is that there are some winners and losers in that scheme.
Senator Roraback.
Thank you. I have a common understanding, and Madam President, it's been very confusing for any of us who have tried to track the consequences of the hospital tax, because we have been given, I think, at least 5 different versions of what it's going to mean to our friendly local hospital. And as we sit here today, about to vote on a budget which imposes, I think it's in the neighborhood of $500 million a year in each of the next 2 years on Connecticut hospitals, and we don't know who the winners will be, who the losers will be, and what the magnitude of the wins or the losses will be. And I think I don't have any difficulty if this institution in its wisdom thinks this is wise policy, but I do have a difficulty with us jumping off a cliff without knowing when we're going to hit the ground. And I think that us taking this action on the basis of incomplete information is not the most responsible thing to do. Madam President, I don't want to go through each of the 81 sections in this bill that increase taxes on Connecticut citizens, the middle class, businesses, and I won't do that. But suffice it to say that I think it deserves more discussion, or at least as much discussion as the spending side of the budget, because, quite frankly, most of the problem that we face is being solved through the imposition of additional taxes, not through any modifications in our spending. And because of that, Madam President, I think we have fallen short of doing the best that we could by the citizens of Connecticut, and I will be opposing this amendment. I'd like to yield, if I may, to Senator Kane.